Welcome to Two Souls Podcast. This is Angela Blaha and Amber Meganhauser. We are here to shift and serve consciousness, ultimately helping you to understand your inner depth, helping you to thrive on this human journey. Hi, Amber.
Good morning. How are you?
Great. So, what do we have to talk about today?
Today I was thinking we would talk about trusting ourselves. How do we cipher the difference between our intuition's response versus our ego's response?
Great question. So, our intuition and our ego, well, it's actually intuition versus ego. Because it seems to have an inner struggle every single time we recognize one or the other, right? So the point is to bring them together, hopefully.
Yes.
Mm. So the ego is always very loud. Here are some tips to understand which ones are egos and which voice inside the head is the ego and which voice is the intuition. So the ego is always loud. It's always like demanding to be heard and to be seen. And the intuitiveness is always whispering. It's very quiet. It's never really like go this way and never go anywhere else. It just sort of gives you like hints of information. It gives you directions and stuff, but it's really up to you, if you follow the ego or if you follow the intuitiveness. So, mm, the intuition is the deeper parts of who you are, right? Like it's that voice that never really demands, but it's always there giving hints and giving information and um, trying to align you more with your soul's desire versus society or being in competition or having that drive that really isn't your drive but you think it should be your drive. It's the shoulda woulda couldas. That's the ego.
And it is very strong I feel like when I ask a question, um, a lot of times, you kind of get that very first response and and it is pretty quiet. And you kind of think about it, and then the ego steps in and it's just like rips every bit of it apart. Why should you do this? Why should you do that? How come you want to do this?
Yeah, the ego is always creating doubt because it's always in competition with something or someone or some place, right? And the intuition is like, well, okay, we can do that, but it's probably not for our best good. It's for someone else's best good. Yeah, the ego is
So, what
always.
is a good
Go
go
ahead.
ahead?
No, the ego is always trying to step in,
Wh-
creating a distraction, literally.
So, what would be a good way to kind of quiet our ego and slowly learn how to listen to our own intuition versus the ego, because it is so loud in our head sometimes that you feel like that's the right answer because it is just like screaming, do this.
Yeah, well, there's some great practices out there to incorporate into your life. One of them that I highly recommend is meditation because it quiets that mind. Not that we're shutting off our thinking, but it quiets it down enough so that we can literally learn to listen to the intuition. Um, Another way is to, write things down. Like when things come to you and there's information that's brought in, then write them down so that you can have the black and white. The mind can see the black and white on the paper that says, oh, this actually did come true. I should probably start to listen to these little hints of intuitive information that really pull me more into who I want to become here. Walking in nature is a good way to listen to your intuitiveness. Um, what ways do you practice, Amber?
Uh, Meditation was one that really did help me with a lot of things, and it it quiets the mind for right now, and it is a little bit of a practice. I mean, when I first started, I was like, "What the heck am I doing?" Like, because your ego wants to come in, and you have a million thoughts going through your mind. And so what I did was I send mine to the basement. She just stays down there all the time because I cannot deal with her trying to. I feel like it sabotages everything I want to do because it comes in and it's just like trying to brainwash me to do something that I don't prefer to do. So the meditation has helped with completely quieting that part of it. And I feel like it creates the awareness to listen, and you kind of know what you're listening for. And so it just gets stronger and stronger with every time you practice it.
Yeah, I think you said a key word there of awareness, right? Like that's the very first thing is to be aware that you do have these two voices. Well, some of us have more than two voices, but we do have two voices for sure. One is the ego and one is the intuition. And being aware of the one that creates doubt, worry, anxiety, depression, and the one that says, look, we can overcome anything. We can do anything in our life. We can create, we can heal instantly, we can manifest things. And then the ego comes over here and says, yeah, but how? Right? Like the ego is always looking for the how. But if you're actually aligning with your intuitiveness, the how gets created with you focusing on your wants, dreams, and desires, which ultimately pulls you into deeper depths of knowing, which is intuitiveness. So, yeah, meditation quiets the thinking part of us and the part that creates all of the doubt, worry, and anxiety. And it does open us up to, the different stages and levels of conscious awareness. So, awareness is the very first key.
Yeah. And once you create that awareness too, you can't unknow it. It's there with everything that you do, and it just makes you stronger with every step that you take.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't
When I
unknow it. That's for sure.
when I first started, I felt like such a newbie, and I was like, how the heck am I going to get to the point where I trust myself? I know my answers, I know my responses. But that's just it. It's a practice. It doesn't happen overnight either, but you gain that little glimpse of awareness, and every day it grows and grows and grows because you can't unknow it.
Yeah, and when you can't like unknow it, right? You start to listen to it more and more and more. And pretty
Yes.
soon you're just living an intuitive life and in a meditation practice and you don't even give it a second thought. It just becomes your lifestyle. I think that that's part of moving forward into different states of consciousness. Like it has to become your lifestyle. Like me seeking higher and different states of consciousness all the time, it's just my lifestyle. It's just who I've become. And for me, it's very
I
intriguing and
com-
it's very interesting.
I completely agree with you. It changes you on multiple different levels, and it does become your new lifestyle.
Yeah. It's just like, people go on diets to eat healthy, but what has to change is your belief in what food is and your belief in what a diet is, right? Like you can't go on a diet and then go back to eating the way you used to before the diet. It just does not work. It has to become a lifestyle. So, you know, when we're talking about intuition versus ego, well, what lifestyle do you want to live? Do you want to live in that egoic kind of competitive against the world kind of old energy, which we've been living in for eons? Or do you want to live more in a lifestyle based upon your wants, needs, and desires? It's not selfish when we move into that kind of space, that intuitive space. It's just that you know that you know that you know without any doubt about what you need, want, and desire. You know what your body needs, you know what your mental mind needs, you know what your emotions need, you know what your spirit needs. There's
Yes.
power in knowing who you are and why you're here versus just flipping from one thing to another, trying things out and, living according to the ego who is always in competition with something.
So with the ego part of that too, you just said something that made me think of something from my that I'm dealing with is, I think that our awareness changes all the time too. I have noticed that um, my interests change as I transform. And sometimes they stay with me, sometimes they just lead me down a different path. And I think it's because I feel like it's my intuition telling me that I need to learn something in that area, whether it's something that I'm going to use forever and it's going to stay with me, or whether it's just something for me to be aware of to be able to move on to the next step. Um, like the whole rabbit hole thing, sometimes I feel that our ego does kind of pull us down, but so does our intuition because you have to learn something to be able to grow. And I've really noticed that with myself a lot where I have been pulled in different direction. It's like, oh, I guess I needed to learn this to be able to move forward. And then it's like it's done with. Is that normal for a lot of people to go through that?
Yeah, because the more let's say the deeper you go into your own consciousness and into your own understanding of who you are, we do have to sort of remember things. We have to sort of like experience things, but the difference between the rabbit hole of intuition and the rabbit hole of ego is when you're in that egoic kind of competitiveness, like you can stay there for eons, right? And when
Yeah.
you pop in when you move into the intuitive rabbit hole, it's like, oh, here the awarenesses are just one upon another, and you can move through it very quickly. That's the difference between being in an ego rabbit hole, which holds you there, right? And you don't necessarily move through it. You just repeat the pattern, repeat the pattern, repeat the pattern. And the intuitive rabbit hole is, oh, you're in awareness, you're listening to your intuition. You're understanding how you can move through it so you don't have to experience it again. There's no repetition. There's no repeating a pattern. There's no like staying stuck in that kind of area because you're intuitively listening for your soul's direction. The ego never really gives direction because it's always pulling from the past. But the intuition is listening to the soul's direction and giving you information about how you can move through something or do something differently so that you don't actually get stuck there.
That makes a lot of sense. I feel like I have gone down a few rabbit holes with that, but it's almost like the minute I learn what I need to learn, it's like done with. And I'm like, okay, next step. Great. This is awesome. And and it does just kind of all flow. One thing you said that kind of stuck out to me too is that I just lost what I was gonna say. Hmm. Guess I wasn't meant to say it.
It'll come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving through energy is really what we do in higher states of consciousness is we become aware, but then we don't really hang out there for very long. Um, because we're always moving, right? Like in consciousness, there it's just energy, vibrations, frequencies, and energy, vibration, frequencies never stay stuck in one space. They will stay there until they learn something or until they experience what they want, and then they move on, but they don't get stuck. In competitive, egoic kind of energy, it's a direct competition and a repeating of a pattern until you either get so sick and tired of the pattern that you force yourself to take a new action step, or you just sort of hang out there and you never ever move anywhere. Humanity has sort of been stuck in that kind of energy for probably about 2,000 years. Now we're
Wow.
opening up into, yeah, it's been a long time. Now we're opening up into these new experiences, these new levels of conscious awareness, really listening to that intuitive self. And like things happen very, very quickly over there. There's no time in the existence of consciousness. Well, there's no time at all, period. But you recognize that there is no time and that you can transform anything instantaneously versus working through a process, which is what the ego needs in order to take a new action step. It has to know and understand the how to and the process of it. Where if you're really listening to your own intuition, there's no process. The process gets created around what you want, dream, and desire. Huge differences between the two.
Yeah, there is. Once you recognize it, you absolutely know the difference.
Yes,
One question I
definitely.
one question I
Mhm.
had was you had made a comment about remembering that, our intuition reminds us and helps us remember the things that we need to know. Um One and that I feel like is one thing that I kind of struggle with a little bit is remembering. Like I there's so much of my life that I feel like is blocked off that I like don't remember. Why is that?
Well, that's the ego mind wanting to like put a timeline together. So we don't really, things in our life that we experience, if they're not, we're programmed to believe that if they're not major life lessons or major events or, trauma, I want to say, then, when life is good, we don't really pay attention to anything. We just know that life is good. But we've been programmed to believe that the trauma has more energy than the good stuff. But if you look at your life and you don't have, memory of your life, those areas were probably fantastic because there's no trauma involved in them. But yet your mind, your ego mind really wants to go back to the trauma to relive the pattern over and over and over. So think about your life. Is that true?
I feel like yes and no because I mean I did deal with some trauma in my life, but I feel like I have a hard time remembering that too, and maybe it's because I want to block it out.
Yeah, well, that's the other right? That's the other edge is that the ego sometimes doesn't want to relive that pattern, or it doesn't want to remember any of it. And so it will completely block it out. Either
That
way,
does
it's
make sense.
fine.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
about the good though. It does make sense about the good though, and like why I don't have a lot of like memory because I feel like life was really great, but I'm like, why can I not remember that? Like I feel like I should remember that. And it
Well,
bothers me.
because
Like that's one thing.
yeah. Yeah, well, we're
I just want to
programmed to
remember it all.
yeah, exactly, right? Exactly. Why don't we remember it all? Come on.
Right?
Well yeah, so the mind is just a memory bank on it only remembers the past. And so whatever you put into the memory bank that says this is important, I should remember this. When life is going really good, we don't necessarily make those imprints when we should be making those imprints. When life is going really bad, we make those imprints because we play it over and over and over in our head. Or we just totally get rid of it and never want to see it or hear it again. So, but when life is going really good, we're just flowing along, right? Like we're not imprinting anything when we should be printing, the happy times and how we got there and how we can, like, if we follow the intuition, we should be imprinting that so the mind can understand the process of that moving forward. But we're not programmed to do that. But that's really, you know, we should be imprinting that just as much as we're imprinting the traumas.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that came up today because I am really gonna start focusing on imprinting good things in my life because I feel like that's something that I don't do that I really want to know about.
Yeah. Why not? Why aren't we? Why don't we put as
Yeah.
much emphasis or even more on the freaking amazing things that we do in our life?
Yeah, that actually makes no sense at all to imprint the bad because who does want to remember that crap?
Well, we remember it
Life's
because we probably didn't work through it.
yeah. Maybe
We
that's
just got
why I
stuck
don't
there.
remember it now too, is
Yeah,
I took the steps to work through it all and now it's just I live a
it's
new
done.
world. I live a different person. Yeah, it's over, it's done with, and I'm all about moving forward, living your best life.
Well, that's the beauty of consciousness. Excuse me. And when we like become super aware, we can move through the traumas of our life, and when we move through them, it's completely done. We don't have to remember it anymore because it's a done deal. With lesson is
Mhm.
learned, the soul has figured it out, and the ego is like, okay, I can't hold that anymore. What? So then it's just gone. That's the beauty of consciousness and how we can work through things. Then we don't it's a done process.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, it's
Well,
super easy and simple.
yeah, I'm all about easy and simple. That's like my favorite word in the whole world.
I agree. Hmm. Yeah, life does not have to be hard. And when we open ourselves up to, different levels of conscious awareness and how we can move through the things in life that we, are stuck in, that's the whole point, is moving through that. And then all of a sudden creation comes through and it moves through you. When creation comes through and it moves through you, that's where the imprinting should be happening. Because when you're in that intuitive space, we should be imprinting like all of the knowledge, all of the wisdom that comes through in those divine messages or that divine energy.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I
When we
was
do
the go ahead.
when we do that, it opens us up even to bigger spaces of consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. In my past, I would say probably 5 years ago and before, I made life very hard for myself. Like I look at it now and I'm just like, why did I do that to myself? But we just like have no idea like how hard we make things for ourselves. And sometimes like people even say that to me now. They're just like, I'm so different than I was a few years ago. I have completely transformed. And that's one thing that I decided that I was never going to make life hard for myself ever again. And I don't. Like everything's easy now, you know? You don't get upset about things. It takes, I just everything's easy. The things you manifest, like everything just happens for you when you just trust, believe, listen to your intuition and know that everything's going to be fine and everything works out the way it's supposed to. And I look at
Yeah.
my past and I'm like, yeah, I did make things hard for myself. And it actually blows my mind that I did that. So looking at that me versus the me that makes everything easy, I definitely lived in my ego's head back then. And today I live and listen to my intuition every single day. And it's literally like pick a side. Do you want life hard or do you want life easy? Your ego's going to make it hard. Your intuition makes it easy.
Exactly, exactly. It's exactly how it works.
It's kind of mind blowing when it actually happens and it just like hits you one day and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
it's so you're just you feel lighter. I mean, just even sitting here, my shoulders, I'm just like, I just feel lighter all the way around.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's exactly how the aha moments work, right? But we should be,
Yeah,
like, paying really deep attention to those aha moments because they're phenomenal when you get the process of working through something versus staying stuck in something.
absolutely.
Well, Amber, thank you so much for joining today.
Yes, thank you so much for answering some questions. It always helps me so much on my journey. And we would like to thank everybody for sharing this space with us today. We greatly appreciate all of our listeners. If you have a topic that you would like to discuss with us, feel free to reach out, email me at ambermeg2@icloud.com. We would love to hear your questions from anybody, everybody. Until next time, from our soul to yours, have a super fantastic day.